I don't know what's scarier tonight, the fact that there's like Chinese people from peripheral to peripheral in my sight, or that the city I'm from, which is Ajax, there are more Chinese people here in this room than in Ajax. It's crazy. Scary. We live in such a difficult world, don't we? I remember coming from India. I was born and raised in India. And, yeah, India, woo! Maybe I'm the only one. I was 12 years old and had no idea why we picked Canada. India is hot, full of people. Canada is cold. And people nicely dispersed all over the place. So I come to Canada, and I quickly learn the reality of what it means to make friends. And it sucks to make friends when you have an Indian accent. I'm serious, I had one. Believe me, you don't understand how hard it was to try to lose that accent. Because that accent just, like, nobody wanted to talk to you. You're like, he's an Indian kid, and he looks Chinese. Whoa. It was weird. So I watched a lot of TV. My dad hated it. You know, all the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Anybody? Yeah, small school? Yeah. We'll do some little after. Anyways. And you realize, really early on, just how much this culture offers you to hide behind. And tonight, I want to address the things that we hide behind, because we're all good at it. We're all good at this game called hide and seek. We hide from everything. We hide from people. We hide from institutions. We even hide from ourselves. And I'll tell you something tonight, whether you believe it or not, we hide from God. We actually think we hide from God. But God's the one who sees us. He sees the true us. And there's a question I want to ask you tonight, and it's the one I want to start off with. Where are you? Seems like a very simple question. Oh, wait, I'm up there. Anyways, got distracted there for a second. It's the Indian mentality. There's a beautiful creation story that's found in the book of Genesis. And there's this question that God asks his creation. But before we even talk about that question, you have to understand something. The people who first read the book of Genesis were surrounded by tons and tons of different cultures. All these cultures had different faiths, and these different faiths had different gods. And these gods claimed that creation came about by an accident. There are actually some beliefs, if you go back far enough, that there were gods at the time who fought each other, and when they fought each other, out of their battle together, Earth and all the universe sort of came out. It's not my cup of tea. But all these faiths and thoughts and religions had one thing in common. The gods were far away. They were up here, and we were down here. Okay, you can cut that slide. It's disgusting, some of these people. I'm sorry, parents. Yes, this sermon is brought to you by Burger King. So in the midst of these stories of creation and all that stuff comes this story of Genesis. But Genesis is different. The God of Genesis is completely different. He does not create out of confusion or conflict. He creates on purpose. He creates with intentionality. And he loves his creation. And the writer of Genesis is trying to portray to those who are reading it this understanding that God, when he spoke creation out, and it happened, it was intentional. The idea that he spoke something and then spoke something again and spoke something again. And as he kept on speaking, these things came out. Think about it this way. You say something, you can't take that back. If I call you stupid, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, can we just rewind a little bit? You can't take it back. That person already thinks that he or she is stupid. The writer of Genesis is giving us this idea that God did not make a mistake. He didn't say like, oops, trees. You know, he didn't accidentally bring this about. He had intentionality. And then the story sort of shifts and it zooms in and he says, guess what? He creates mankind. Look at what it says. I want to read this to you because this is really fascinating. If you do have a Bible at home, you can go check this out. I got this online. This is from the Message version. God spoke. Let us make human beings in our image, making them reflect our nature so they can be responsible for the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the cattle, yes, earth itself, and every animal that moves on the face of earth. God created human beings. He created them godlike, reflecting God's nature. He created them male and female. God blessed them. Prosper, reproduce, fill earth. Chinese people really love that command. Take charge. Be responsible for fish in the sea. Yeah, cheer for that, right. And God looked over everything that He had made, and it was good. It was so very good. And so this book of Genesis sort of introduces you to this God. He says, you know what? I didn't create out of conflict. There's nobody else that I got to fight with. I'm not confused. I'm not this like multi-personality kind of God. Do I create? Do I not create? None of that stuff. I created because I wanted to. And this story in Genesis tells us that God had a specific idea in mind. And then the writer leads us into this amazing, amazing journey. He takes us into this place called the Garden of Eden. And he says, God created this Garden of Eden with everything good in it for mankind and God to hang out. I know it's really hard to imagine right now, but I want you to try and think and imagine this. No sorrow, no pain, no war, no murders, no theft, no slander, nothing that is intended to hurt. It's hard to imagine that, right? When we look at MSN or get our newspapers in the morning, and you start to see all sorts of stuff. Wherever you go, you start to see things around us collapsing. And the writer of this book is saying, guess what? There was a time when everything was good. Why? Because this God who creates is good. There's nothing evil in Him. He doesn't want to harm. He doesn't want to hurt. He wants it to be good. Why? Because He wants that friendship, that connection with His creation. He's involved. And what He does is He gives this identity to mankind. He says, look, we're going to be partners together. I'm going to give you my nature. I'm going to give you my goodness. That's who you are. The goodness comes from me. The creation that I made is something that I want you to help me take care of. I want to be involved. And this story comes in the face of all those other stories that says, God, over here, you, over here. And the book of Genesis says, nuh-uh. We right here, God's right here. But what's a story without conflict, isn't it? What's a story without something bad happening? The writer unfortunately tells us that God gives mankind a choice. He gives mankind a choice to choose to live with God, to be partners with God, to take care of creation, to live with God, and to continue getting and becoming more and more good according to the nature that God gave, or to choose everything opposite that. Guess what? They chose otherwise. Some of you might wonder, why would God do that? Why ruin such a good thing? And one of the simplest answers is this: God does not want to force you to love Him. God does not want to force you to come after Him. God wants to present it before you, and He wants you to choose. And He wants you to choose Him. He doesn't want to do some kind of mind Jedi trick on you and say, yeah, choose me. Yeah, that's your choice. Really. But all of a sudden, they choose life without God. And they have no idea what they've done. They've chosen this place where God's no longer there. And this place, they find out really